We've made it through the banquet. We are thinking that things have blown over because nothing happened. We've gone all week. Tom has talked his smack in the office about those staging the coup. And so maybe
it was just a false alarm.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul.
If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
So it is a week after the banquet, and everyone who stages the coup shows up early to church together. The way we would run church is everyone who was on the worship team and in the sound booth and all of that would show up early, and they would run through the full set. Right? Well, at least that was the game plan. Sometimes you only got through one song because Tom would throw a fit over something, and you'd have to do the same song like 6 times, and then you never got to the rest of the set. And
that did happen a couple times.
And then this is on top of, on Tuesday night, we would have to come for, 3, sometimes 4 hours and do worship practice. They would show up a little bit early and they would run through the music, and then it was always like, well, we need to be done, a half an hour before service starts. Well, that never happened. That hardly ever happened. Like, usually it's like 15 minutes. If you're done 15
30 seconds.
Yeah. If you're done 15 minutes before service starts, you're doing really well. Usually Tom's cue would be the old ladies would come in and sit down and listen to worship, like your warm-up practice. And then he would be like, okay, we're good. And I think the only reason he would cut it off is because he knew other people were in the building, so he couldn't freak out and get mad. And so you guys are practicing. It is January 26th of 2020. And you guys get done. Everyone kind of, puts their stuff down and goes, and, sometimes you guys will go off like kind of behind the stage and pray sometimes. But I think that was mostly like a
We always prayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it depended on how early we got done, but we always prayed right before service in the room that was behind the stage. Always.
Yeah. There was a point in time where you guys would do like a little like devotional, like Corey and Topanga would lead a devotional and stuff.
We did that on worship practice.
Yeah, they did it, and this might have been like when you were working, and like with like Etheridge and stuff. They would do like a little short, like center yourself, like devotional thing.
On Sundays, yeah.
Yeah. Because they would invite the sound booth to come back. And we were like, well, this is our time. Like, we got to go.
That does sound like that was the season of Etheridge. That was definitely, I do remember them trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think in this season in 2020, it was very much like, okay, we're done practicing. Everyone like go to the bathroom, get a drink, do what you need to do, and then come back so we can be ready to roll, right? I started doing like a countdown to, you know, when worship would start. Not only because we were live streaming it and stuff like that, but it also gave people in the lobby a chance to see, like, okay, the countdown has started. We're trying to get people out of the lobby and in to the sanctuary, because we were having a big problem with, like, people would hang out in the lobby and talk until after worship was done, and then they would go sit down and they didn't, like, participate in worship. So we're trying to move people into the sanctuary for worship. But then it also gave you guys on the worship team a chance to, like, okay, I got like 4 minutes and 42 seconds. I'm going to, you know, run, go fill up my coffee real fast or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And so we were kind of in that little transition phase before that countdown started. And everyone who had staged, who was like a part of the coup, right, shows up early, and they come and they sit on the side and they watch you guys practice, and they watch you guys like warm up. And I remember thinking, like, this is really weird. This is really weird that they're here early. And so Tom steps off the stage, and they walk up to talk to him, and they go back in the little room, like where you guys typically prayed behind the stage. They all go back there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they stayed back there, if they stepped back there just for a minute, or what happened. I was like, I had to go do something and check on things before I had to come back and start the countdown.
I don't remember it being awkward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember getting off the stage for practice, and like it was like normal, and then like, yeah, like they needed to go talk, and it didn't seem like, it wasn't like everybody was sitting around being like, oh, they're gonna go talk, you know. I don't remember any of that. Like,
no, I felt like it was awkward because I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
And so
yeah, so to anybody else, it just seemed like,
yeah, it's just,
I need to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. And I honestly, I don't think anyone even really noticed, because it's not like Tom would put his guitar down and go jump off the stage and go shake hands and kiss babies and say hello to everyone. He didn't like hanging out in the lobby. He didn't like doing that stuff, because then people would talk to him and he would feel awkward not knowing who people were. But then also, like, people annoyed him. Like, people annoyed him.
It's not a people person.
No. And so I don't think anyone even really noticed that Tom was having a conversation with someone. And so I do what I need to do. I come back, I start the countdown, and I'm, going through my checklist. I don't even know what happened. Like, they could have stayed back in that little room for like that whole, like, I don't know, it was probably 10, 15 minutes. They could have, been back there for 30 seconds. I don't know. But worship, we go, through worship and everything. And it gets to the point where Tom's about to start his sermon, and he doesn't introduce the sermon. And he says, I have been accused of, not being a good leader and not being a pastor who loves and all of this stuff. And he basically pleads his case, and in the most, like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I don't even think, like, narcissistic manipulation even, like, does it justice, because it was almost like he was acknowledging he had faults, but not really. Because he would be like, I know I could be difficult to deal with, but Jesus was passionate. Jesus flipped tables. And so it was like, he would kind of acknowledge he had a flaw, but then he would like flip it back around and be like we talked about in a previous episode, like, I can only do what I see my Father doing. Like, I'm only doing what God is showing me, And so it was really weird. And at one point, Tom gets on his knees and starts out praying, like, on stage in front of everyone. Like, everyone, you could have heard a pin drop in that sanctuary.
Yeah. And this is from somebody that, like, does nothing, like, is not the, like, I don't know if you've ever been at church where there's like the pastors and they do showy stuff, right? Or
he doesn't bring
act things out, right? Like, they bring props, or they do silly stuff on stage, right? Or so, like, they perform little things. This isn't that kind of guy. Like, this is the guy who stands up on stage and gives a sermon, and that's it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And it was the most awkward, weird, and not like goofy weird, but like Stedford creepy weird.
Well, and that's the thing, is the people who really knew who Tom was behind the scenes. Those of us from the office, everyone on the worship team, people who, like, family members, everyone looked at this and was like, what the actual hell?
Yeah.
But as I looked out, because I was up in the sound booth, right? So I can look down, and I'm like, Tom gets on his knees and starts praying. And at first he starts off like, God forgive me if I have done anything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But then it
was people say I've done this, and so, if I have, which I haven't. But
and it was like,
saying it.
Yeah, it was like accusations like, I'm not a good leader, I'm not loving, I'm, all of this stuff. And so it starts off with, if I've done this, Lord, please show me, and, I'm seeking your forgiveness. But then it turns into, God, I praise you for being this pastor to this church. I praise you. Thank you for choosing me. And so I'm like, this is really freaking weird. So I'm like looking around, right? And there's women crying. Like, there are people holding their hands up as though they are like praying over Tom as he is praying. And then the beer ministry guy, who is one of the people who is trying to stage a coup, gets up on stage and lays hands on Tom and stands there like he's praying over him as Tom is praying.
Yeah. It was weird.
And
I mean, not saying that like hindsight 2020, it was weird.
No, in the moment, it was weird.
I was like, this, what is I was like, what is going on? Like, this is the strangest thing that I have ever been a part of, ever.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like in the moment. I was like, what is going on? But I also felt like, I do remember feeling like he publicly shamed in his prayer and on his knees, that he publicly shamed the beer ministry guy, because I knew enough.
Yeah.
I knew enough from the talkings outside that, I mean, I knew that the beer ministry guy had a problem, right, with Tom. And I knew he was pulpit shaming in his whole speech, in his whole on his knees praying. Like, it was he was rude. Like it was not, and that's what I think made it weird, is I was like, you're directly talking to him, why, but you're putting on this big showy display. Like, that's what was weird. And then I thought that the beer ministry guy felt like 2 inches tall and felt like garbage because Tom had pretty much publicly humiliated him, that he was up praying because he felt remorse.
Yeah.
For trying to go after Tom.
It's so funny that was your perspective, because mine was, okay, finally, he sees, like the beer ministry guy sees, and I didn't think he was getting up to pray because he felt bad. I was like, oh, he's getting up to pray. He actually sees Tom is the pastor. He needs to submit to his authority. Finally, we can squash this and get over this crap. You know?
Yeah, that's so funny.
But
because how funny, like we were both in the same room and have totally different thoughts on what was going on in the moment.
Well, but I think like to the general, like just church congregation, no one even knew that the beer ministry guy had beef with Tom. They thought
thought he was being his genuine self.
Yeah, this is a man getting up to pray for his pastor because he's going through a difficult situation.
Yeah.
And like in his prayer, Tom was like, if I'm not fit to be the pastor, Lord, reveal it and show us all.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so then after service, you have all of these people going to Tom. You are our pastor. No. God doesn't need to reveal anything. You are who God needs for us, right? And then I had people, like, they would go up and tell Tom, oh, no, you're our pastor. Please, don't quit. And then they would come to me and be like, what happened? And I genuinely did not know. And so I was getting phone calls. Brandi was getting phone calls. Like, the word spread. So, like, all the people who had missed church that Sunday or were, like, working in children's ministry, so they weren't there to watch the whole thing. Like, people were like, what is going on? And we streamed that sermon live, but we didn't make it available for playback.
No.
Which is, I think speaks volumes. And I didn't even have to be asked. Like, so I showed up on Monday at the office. My Monday routine was I would go in, I would edit I would download what we had put out there on YouTube, right? I would edit that video. So I would take out the worship. If we sang like one of Tom's songs, so like a Come As You Are original song, I would leave that in. But like anything else, we didn't have we had licensing to perform it live. And we did now there's streaming licenses, right? But like at that time we didn't have streaming licensing. And so I would edit all the worship out and it would just be the sermon. And so I went in and I was trying to find a place in it to where I could like cut out Tom's prayer and then get into his sermon, but he really didn't. Like, his sermon was weird that day. It wasn't even like he like got up and he's like, okay, and then today we're talking about, the fruit of the Spirit or whatever it was. Like, he went through his points, but it was in a very like weird, abbreviated way. It was just a really weird sermon altogether. And so I was like trying to find a point where I could cut all that out, but then I'm like, he keeps referencing back to it. And so to cut it out would be like, what is he talking about? So I was like, I'm just not going to put it up. And so I typically on Mondays, I would get there. It would just be like me and Barbara Jean for a little while. And then after a while, Tom would show up with Charlotte. So Tom came in and I was like, can I ask you a question? He's like, if it's about yesterday, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, well, it's about the sermon. And he's like, I just don't even put it out there. And I was like, well, I wasn't going to. That was my question is, do I have your permission not to, like, you know? And he's like, nope, don't even want to put out there. And so it was like, I already knew, but I felt like I had to double check, but I already knew.
Yeah.
And so it was like we were just going through, it was like I had to put on the show. Like, I'm going to ask you because I know if I don't ask you, you're going to be mad.
Yeah,
but,
if I just do it, then you're going to be like, yeah.
But I already know what you want. I already know.
Yeah.
But I can't just do it because then that's me not submitting.
Right.
And so I had very little autonomy over what I did. And so he goes in his office and he shuts the door. So I didn't like spending a lot of time in the office on Mondays because me and Barbara Jean didn't really get along well. Which is really weird because I've known her as long as I've known my husband, and like her kids were in my wedding. Like it's really weird that her and I didn't get along well. And so I did what I needed to do and I left. I come back on Tuesday. So we're supposed to have Tuesday prayer, you know, all of this. Brandy's in the office, Lori's in the office, right? So we do Tuesday prayer because we all show up early when the office is supposed to be open. Tom and Old Reliable do like men's coffee where they go and sit and drink their coffee and gripe about their wives. And then after coffee, they would come over and we would all do prayer. So we do prayer. It was kind of one of those, like, no one wanted to ask Tom, like, so are we going to talk about what happened on Sunday? No one really wanted to say anything. And so we didn't pray for it. Like, this is supposed to be the time where the staff of the church meets together and prays over the people of the church and prays over the church as a whole and prays for each other. And we all kind of acted like it didn't happen. And at this point, weird. People are still texting me. They're still calling and texting Brandi. What happened? What happened? And so I'm like, we need to have an official statement. Like, we need to know what to say to people. So Brandi and I go into Tom's office with the, like, what would you like us to say when people ask? And he's like, whoop, I was going to call you in here anyway, so shut the door. So we come in and we shut the door, and Brandi and I sit down, and we start getting our asses chewed that these people are leaving the church. Nothing is being said of the Griswolds at this point to us, to Brandi and I. It is all the beer ministry people. They are leaving the church because of Brandi and I. We have made these women's lives difficult, and all they do is complain to their husbands, and now they have to leave the church because Brandi and I are so terrible. And if you remember back, it was like Young Gun left, and we had to have that young families meeting over, like, you know, okay, you guys
that
are
turned into something totally
the next
different.
generation. And then, and like, we had a plan. And remember I said in that 30 minutes, I don't know what happened in that 30 minutes between us setting up for that meeting and me going home and getting Justin and coming back. And Tom completely pivoted and was like, what? And I was like, what the heck is this? Like, this isn't the meeting we discussed. Like, he tells us, as Brandi and I are sitting in his office, the whole reason he had that meeting is it was never about finding the next young leader. He had that meeting so that all of us would sit in the same room together and we would all see that we love the church and we love the Lord, and so we'll stop fighting with each other. And I'm like, I didn't think we were fighting. Like, I don't know what, like, there was the thing with like when I told all the it wasn't even all the girls, it was like all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, like, I don't care if you're friends with each other at school. I don't care if you invite each other to each other's birthdays. When you're here, you're going to love each other. Right? Like, there was a mom who got upset about that, but her and I like had coffee together and we squashed it. And so like, I didn't really understand, like, I was like, what am I doing that's making these people so mad that they want to leave the church over it? And Brandi's like, well, if they're going to leave over us, like, can we call them in? Like, can we all sit down and you be a mediator? And like, you know, if someone has something against you, they should come to you. And if, you know, you don't listen, they should bring someone out. Like, I mean, we would like a chance to sit down and have this conversation and like see what it is that we're doing, because we have no idea what we're doing. And he's like, nope, it's beyond that. They're leaving. They are leaving the church because of you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, that's what it was. Sunday, they come to me and they said, it's you keep Brandi and Amanda or you keep us. You make them step down from ministry and all of that, or we're leaving the church. And because I love you and because I see the good in what you're doing, I stood up for you and I stood in the gap for you. And they just need to see that this is your calling, is to do what you're doing. And I don't know if he wanted, I feel like he kind of wanted us to be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, Tom, our hero. Like, I don't know if that's what he expected from us, but we were like hurt and pretty pissed off and confused.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.